Hi, Jean. And
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So I'm sorry about
Karen.
that, but that's the limitations of these things. So it's good to see everyone here. I had a few people say they weren't going to be able to make it. Did everyone get my email last night?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
If I missed anyone, let me know. I'll send that list out, and I'm going to try to post it on the next meeting's calendar page so that if anyone doesn't have it, you can go there to find it. And you saw that I asked you to vote for 4 books, and then you probably heard we're accepted for an NEA grant for the big read this year in February, and we're doing Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which I loved when it first came out. So I hope you'll
really?
enjoy it. And so I'd like to either vote for her for doing Station 11 for February, or her new book out, which is The Glass Hotel. I think is the title of it, right? So
Laura?
No, yes.
Laura, what does that mean that we were accepted for part of the NEA Big Read? What does that mean?
The National Endowment for the Arts puts out a grant every year to a certain number of institutions, and we got it the first few years of Door County Reads, and it means we're part of a big national program, and we get this money and get to be on the national scale. So actually, it started quite a few years ago. I think it's like the 12th or 13th year or something. The Peninsula Players applied for the grant in the beginning with Alan Kapishke and got it for like 3 years, and then we lost it. So we've been carrying on our own all those years.
Okay.
So now we're back, and when we do get the grant, they have a certain list of books that you have to choose from.
Okay.
We happened to apply for this quite a while back for a book called Station 11, which is a futurist book, but very, very interesting, and a lot of literature and culture in it. And it just so happens it's about a pandemic. So we were kind of
wow.
shocked when everything came together. We got the grant plus this whole current situation. But I think the book's very, very uplifting in a way, because they do show how the arts are so important when people are going through difficult times. So I hope you'll really enjoy it. And as I said, we could either read that book, or we could branch out and do an alternative and be part of the whole group when we do the book in February. So I hope you'll all participate in all the different programs we'll be planning. And welcome to John and everyone else.
Well, I'm glad. I thought NEA stood for National Education Association. But now that's interesting.
Yes, too.
Well, it's a big group that, a lot of things you'll see are sponsored by them on PBS. And
Okay.
so
Oh,
it's
that's
quite an
great.
honor to get this grant again.
Wow.
So as I told the people who were here, for you newcomers, we're going to have to cut this short at 2 o'clock because Morgan has to use our library Zoom account for Egg Harbor. They're doing something on Hoopla, I believe. So you're welcome to join that one also. And I do want to quickly mention that we are having some book programs in August. I'll be talking with Judy Ducharme, who lives up in Ellison Bay and is a published author. She's written a new book set on Pilot Island, and she's going to be talking about her new book, and she's pretty successful with her publishing. So she did a program for NaNoWriMo, the national, the novel writing month last year for us. Did someone have a question?
Can you repeat her name?
Her name's Judy Ducharme. It's on August 11th. And you can find it on our Door County calendar on the website. And the Zoom link will be there. Then on the next day, on the 12th, we have Joseph, and pardon me if I mispronounce his name, Tchaikovsky, and his co-author, Cynthia Kroc, who is with Right on Door County. And he wrote a book about his father's experiences in World War II as part of the invasion of Saipan. He was a Marine, and they did some pretty amazing things, apparently. And he found out about that and researched it and has written this book. And his father, Frank, also became the mayor of Sturgeon Bay for 2 sessions. So it should be pretty interesting. Also then we have Larry Desatel, who's very popular with the public, doing a program on the 18th, which is D-Day for women's suffrage. And that is going to be very in depth. He's asked for at least an hour and a half for that. He often does learning and retirement programs. So they're broadcasting that event through learning and retirement also. So be sure to come and join us for that. Also, a lot of these programs are put on Facebook. If you don't want to participate through Zoom, you can join and watch through Facebook. So those are some of the things I have coming up, and later in the end of the month of Friday, the 21st, is another gardening program for anyone who's participating in gardening in the seed library. So that should be a lot of fun. That's basically what's coming up. Does anyone else have anything to say that you're looking forward to this summer? It's so good to see you all here. So this book that we chose, as you remember, we had hoped to do those other books, but because of the virus situation, we do digital books. So the next list has some digital books, but also I'm doing library books because the libraries are open. You can come and get books. You can either do curbside pickup, or you can come inside the library. Masks are required. All of the branches are open. We do have books being sent around again, so you can order books from other libraries and pick them up here. So I put those 2 books that we had to postpone back on the list. We'll see if they win again, but they still don't have digital copies that are easily available to people. So I've added a bunch of other books that do have digital copies. We'll just have to see what people are interested in. If you know anyone who needs a list, send me an email, or I'll try to post the list on the September event page for our multicultural book group. Is that okay with everyone?
That was great.
I missed maybe something. Are you going to be sending an email and we're going to vote by email?
Yeah, I thought I sent it out, but my email doesn't work quite right now. So if you didn't get it, I'll be sure I'll send you a copy. You didn't get one, Adele?
Don't think I did.
Okay.
I get it.
Everyone else has it? Okay, I'll send it to you.
I did not.
You did not?
I didn't get it either.
When I tried
Laura?
to send it through a group, it says error, it didn't work. So then I try again, and I'm never quite sure what happened.
Laura,
Yes,
I did get the list of books, but we're supposed to vote by email?
you can vote however, yeah, by email, or just tell me whatever you'd like.
Okay, because I was thinking we'd be voting today, so I printed the list out, but I can vote by email too.
Yeah, I put a deadline down there. I think the 18th or something. I forget.
It was the 18th.
Yeah. So I see Arlen is joining us.
Yep.
Hi, Arlen.
Hi, I'm having to eat
I
lunch.
told the others that we're going to have to cut our meeting short at 2 o'clock, just so you're aware of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. My vet appointment ran over. I have nothing else on my whole calendar except for my book Zoom. I told them that. They still ran over.
well, how did everyone like this book? I found it, personally, I found it a little difficult, but once I got into it, I keep puzzling about it because, well, here I have a map of, is that correct for you? It's
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see where Oman is over here at the bottom of the peninsula.
Mhm.
And I happened to watch a week ago, start watching a series on Netflix for anyone who's interested. It's called The Last Post, and it's set in Yemen, and it's about the British soldiers, the last group of British soldiers in Yemen. So it's kind of interesting because this whole history is something that I just don't know much about, the British and the whole area. So if anyone's interested, look up that series on Netflix. But today we're talking about Oman here. And you look at this book and it's all about women, and it's kind of a feminist novel in some ways, isn't it? Written by a woman. And yet this culture is so different that I had trouble really grasping the whole story, and I was listening to the audiobook, and it was a nightmare with the names. I don't know if anyone else had that experience.
Yeah, you need
Yep.
the graphic.
Yeah, so then I did go to the ebook on Hoopla,
Yeah.
and there's the family tree, and that
Yes.
really helps
That's
a
what-
lot. But did anyone,
Yes.
I
Even
thought the
then.
book was extremely sophisticated and well written, and the stories are fascinating.
I want to disagree. I don't think it was entirely about women. I think there's a lot in the person of this Abdallah and his relationships to women, his daughters, his wife, his grandchildren. I thought, in effect, he was the main character, pretty much.
I agree.
The central character, maybe.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, he certainly was, because a lot of the chapters were apparently his voice, and then all of the others were third
Exactly.
And
party.
I sort of viewed it as this man and all these women are just sort of circling around him. And he's the linchpin about which everybody resolves. Especially the woman, I gotta find her now. The father's slave.
Yeah,
Oh, Zarifa?
Zarifa.
Zarifa, yeah,
Mhm.
Zarifa is this other main character.
Mhm.
Well, a little background on that. I don't know if anyone had a chance to see any of the author. Her name is Jokha Alharthi, and they spell it differently in the Arabic from what we see on the book cover. But there's a bunch of videos, and some of the main videos are an interview she had with Christine Amanpour, which is very interesting to listen to. And also she had a PBS interview that goes on. They're short versions, but longer versions. So I'd highly recommend those. And what her background is that she studied Arabic literature at Edinburgh University. So she had a PhD from Scotland. And then she is a professor in Oman, in a university that's the only public university in that country. So that's kind of interesting. She teaches Arabic literature. And this book was published but not translated until 2020 or 2019, and won the Man Booker Award, International Award. And the award's given to both the translator and the author. And the translator is an American who works at Oxford, teaches at Oxford University. And the translator is Marilyn Booth, so she's kind of interesting. And there is going to be another novel coming out in 2021 called Bitter Orange. So we can all look for that in the future. But that novel was actually published some time ago. So what's interesting to me is that Jokha was born in 1978. And apparently Oman eliminated slavery as late as 1970. So
Wow.
it's kind of an interesting time period. So what do you all think about the different women and, how they treated slavery and how slavery was treated in the different parts of society? Okay. Most of the chapters are told, here's a question I have on a list. Most of the chapters are told in the third person point of view, except for Abdallah, Maya's husband, who speaks to us in his own voice. Why might Alharthi have made the decision to let him tell his own story?
Well, I have a theory. I don't know how good the theory is, but if you think about the other male characters in this book, most of them are cads. They're not necessarily really positive people, let's say. And it's interesting with Abdallah, he just seems, to me, he humanizes, because this story in many ways, I think, is the story of women who are in this very kind of oppressive kind of country. And Abdallah is kind of the one where he has a depth. So to me, he kind of helps, I think, kind of round out the story. But if you think about the rest of the men, I mean, from the father, the really cruel father, Abdullah's father, his son Salim, who's lazy. Every guy, it seems like, is quite horrible in here. Nasib, who raped Zarifa, you know, and Abdullah's kind of the only one that kind of comes in my mind that really has kind of a richness to him. That kind of has, you know, that seems to be able to bring kind of a male perspective without it being like overbearing. And what in a culture where it is all overbearing for these women. So I don't know. That's my theory on why maybe he's done in the first person, so that we can kind of see through his eyes, which is sort of represents the country and where it's at, these women and kind of how these women are fighting for their own way of life. They're on trying to take power wherever they can take power.
Yeah, that I think you have a very good point there. Does anyone else have anything to say about that?
Well, I thought that surely she must have been given the award for the poetry and beauty of her writing, because like you said, the story was very difficult to follow, and what it as billed as a story about women, it wasn't. It was about a man, and I know that would be the cultural way that it would obviously go, but I didn't read up on why she got the award, but I did think the writing was very beautiful, more like poetry.
Mm-hmm. And that point about it being difficult to follow, I have a quote from the New York Times Review that said, Alharthi avoids the languid ease of, now I can't read my own writing, of chronology in favor of dozens of taught character studies, often no more than a page or two.
Yeah.
So it really is true that she doesn't make it easy for us.
Yeah.
My writing was,
Yeah.
I thought the beautiful writing actually distracted from that, because I got caught up in how beautiful her writing was, and I didn't care about the characters.
Well, and another review said it's echoing Arabic poetry in her tweet, which is
I read that too.
I can't speak to the poetry as much, but I remember reading War and Peace years ago, and it came with a handy little genealogy or a track for the characters before the first chapter, and showed how they were all interrelated, or at least what their names were and who they were. And I remember just marking that page and referring back to it continually. And I wished after I got halfway through that I had done that for this book, but I didn't. So I kept mixing up the daughters, the women of the different generations. I kept mixing them up.
Wondering if
Beautiful.
anybody would react differently whether you listened to it or read it. And I did both. I read it first and I thought, I don't think I got this fully. So and then listened to it with the genealogical chart in front of me. And then it all came through very nicely. And the reading had the accents and the poetry so beautifully.
I could see.
Yeah.
It is so
anybody else-
reassuring for me to hear that some of the rest of you were confused too, because that was my issue. And I thought I was losing it. So anyway, thanks for sharing that you had some confusion too.
Well, I had read it originally last fall.
Go on.
I was going to say, there were some really beautiful passages. Yeah, I read the book, and I mean, just that kind of gave you a window into the culture. I thought when Maya, when Maya, her baby, that was beautiful. And then when, what's her name? Asma gets, how the husband, future husband's family comes to get her, and there's a parade. I just thought that was really neat. I thought how the writing was beautiful, and I thought it kind of gave you into a world that I know nothing about. So
Yeah. A character that I really found interesting. I don't have the book with me now. Was the strong, I don't know if she was the slave woman, but she had her own, she was the center of another orbital. She was the center of
Zarifa.
many people.
Zarifa.
I love her. Oh, she was tough.
Yeah, and so when we think about the title of the book, Celestial Bodies, yes, Abdallah was kind of maybe a central figure that people are orbiting around, but there were other people who were orbited around by characters too, and I think she was one of those.
Well,
Even though I don't have her name right.
Here's a question about that title. The book's title literally means Ladies of the Moon. How does this title, perhaps more so than Celestial Bodies, reflect the novel?
Ooh.
Oh,
That's the Arabic version of the title.
I would think that Ladies of the Moon is more of a nighttime thing, where celestial bodies not necessarily. So they were wives and they had their influence over the men
Yeah.
in large part at night, including that wonderful woman in the desert
Oh, yes.
who was determined to remain independent and to behave like a man and to take a lover and not marry him, and so on. I liked her even if she was magical, even if she was magical thinking, which I hate in books.
I just felt sorry for that lady sort of locked in that room who kept saying, I'm here, I'm here.
Oh,
I know.
Masuda, I am Masuda.
Yeah. And she's like the old world. But then you have London. What a character. I mean, to name that girl London.
Yes.
And then she, I mean, it's such a, even though it's in the middle of an Arabic culture, this idea of love and marriage and how they work and don't work is kind of universal. It really brings that home, doesn't it? With the girls choosing the husbands who, one of them moves to Canada and basically abandons her. The poet is kind of a egomaniac in a way, or you know, in London gets divorced from him, even though she's really smart and becomes a doctor.
And the other, after 14 children, sends him away.
I've always heard, you know, you always hear these in the Middle East, or you shouldn't necessarily classify everyone, but they do have traditionally arranged marriages. A lot of the times the women were not able to meet men. I don't know if you, who knows much about that. In my husband's family, they do have some intermarriages in the family because you were allowed to meet your cousins, which is what happened in one of these marriages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're limited in your choices, but they seem to find different people for different reasons. And that poor Maya, in love with that one person who she could never have. Then her husband, it seems like such a nice guy,
Yeah.
and she can't appreciate it. So it's kind of universal in that way, isn't it? Even though they're different culture. Does anyone have experience with any of that? No.
No.
We all had arranged marriages.
Well, and they tried to arrange the marriages, but it didn't work out, did it?
No, no.
And I know a couple cases. A friend of mine who lives in the Middle East, her daughter came here for school and she fell in love with a local Wisconsin boy. And it was kind of hard going at first, but she finally gave up and went home, and she married an older man, and she seems to be very well settled. Whereas if she had married that American boy, I don't know that it would be so happy. It's funny to look at that and think about that.
Yeah.
Well, none of the marriages in this book I would call were really good marriages. They arranged or not arranged. You look at the behaviors of the men and the women. Maybe I have an old-fashioned idea about marriages, but it didn't strike me as any of the women were really happy, or some of the men. I don't know.
Or any of the men, yeah.
Yeah. Don't the statistics show that the arranged marriages have, I don't know who did the statistics, maybe they're skewed, but arranged marriages have the same success rate as marriages for love? That's what I read that somewhere, more than once, I think, that they have the same divorce or unhappiness rate
Yeah.
as a regular marriage.
Mm.
When you look at all of the marriages, was there a good one in there?
Yeah.
Now, was there anything?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list here.
No. Not really.
And different cultures have different ideas of happiness or different
Yes,
criteria. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I asked my Khalid at the beginning was a good marriage, or seemed like it might be a good marriage.
Mhm.
I thought it
Yes.
was interesting. He just thought she sort of fit into his orbit. That was kind of like, he gave her freedom to take classes and that kind of thing. She was just beautiful, and she just kind of, her demeanor sort of worked with how he lived his life. So that was kind of the extent of it, but they seemed pretty happy initially. But the rest of them, not so much.
So, let's see. I have this really nice list of questions.
Go for it.
Speaking of Abdallah and Maya, when Abdallah asks his wife if she loves him, she responds, "It's the Egyptian films. Have you eaten your brain?" What do you make of her response, and what does she mean? How does Abdallah react? What does that all mean? Why can't she appreciate what she has?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
That
she
was
never-
sad.
She
That was
never
sad.
had
Yeah.
that in, right?
Yeah.
That she
Yeah.
had that infatuation over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Of
but
course,
that seemed like
of
a
course-
Western moment in the book, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he would ask
Yeah.
her that. I was surprised
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Why do you think it's Western moment?
because given the culture, you wouldn't expect a man to care, or maybe not care, but not express that he cared, that she loved him, because of if it was a arranged marriage or whatever. It wasn't a marriage for love, so why would you expect him to ask that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where
Of
does
course,
this?
it was, I think it was hard for her to answer that because she was not privileged to, and we are, because we were reading the book and reading the chapters that he wrote. So we knew that he was more open than she realized. She was looking at him the way she expected to look at a husband, or rather
Good point.
expecting him to be like all the other husbands in that culture.
That's a good call.
Sometimes, yeah,
Yeah. It's a thought. Yeah.
sometimes you're right. Like this husband here,
Yeah.
when I first married, I was coming out of a very controlling marriage with a very controlling man. And it would be time to fix supper, and I didn't really feel like cooking. And I would, anything that Bela said about what's for supper, I would get my hackles up and be very defensive. And he would say, no, I'm just asking for information. I'm capable of opening the refrigerator. But I didn't, the first marriage was not a man who would have opened the refrigerator, never in a million years.
So it's really expectations of what you think other people are going to do.
Yeah.
What they're really doing.
It took me a long time to unlearn that.
Makes sense.
Is there a question about the ending? I would like to talk about the ending.
Yeah.
I don't
I
see
didn't-
anything specific, but what do you have to say about it?
Well, it sounds like he wanders into the ocean with Muhammad and essentially leaves him to drown.
Yeah. It did
Yeah.
kind of-
Yeah, I think so. I think he does.
Was that magical thinking there, or was it real, do you think?
I thought it was real.
I did
Muhammad
too.
was the autistic child? Or-
Yeah, he was there.
And he had gone to a lot of efforts with schools and teachers and a lot of work to try to help the boy probably did not have the resources we would have today in our society, or in this country rather. And then did he just give up after, I think the boy at that point must have been maybe 10 to 12 years old. And the mother kept saying, well, he's okay, he'll be okay. The mother defended him, Maya. I was just, the ending left me feeling, what?
I
Did
agree.
anybody else feel like you were left just sort of
Other
hanging?
people, I really happened. I think he really did carry him into the sea, but do other people think that?
No,
Because it
No.
was kind of ambiguous.
no, I thought it was magical thinking.
Or a dream. Because a
Okay.
lot of the times he wasn't sleeping on that
That's-
swing, sort of dreaming.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
is that what I got out of it?
Say that again, Laura, what?
Did Abdallah.
Wasn't he on an airplane some of the time? Just
Oh,
thinking
okay.
about things.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh, yeah, the whole story was on the airplane, and now this was off the airplane. I didn't pick up on that.
Or was he just dreaming that? You know,
Yeah, I don't know. I took it to be that he drowned his son. You know, it's interesting. There were passages in the book where he expressed frustration with the boy, you know, with the banging, the behaviors of an autistic child. So I don't know. For somebody, I read it that you know, I assumed he took him in the water and drowned him. So,
I did too.
But did that fit the behavior of the man of the previous 200 pages?
yeah, no.
Yeah. I was not ready for that.
Yeah, I agree.
or is there part of the culture that might think
But
like,
it's complex.
what?
Everybody's complex.
Yeah.
Oh, complex, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, the family structure is a little bit different from what we have.
A little.
So it's hard to really understand some of it. I mean, I often think about the Turkish culture and how they had, the sultans had tons of wives, and the wives had kids and they were trying to kill each other. The other wives were trying to kill all the different kids. So it's not like here where we think of family values. You know, I don't.
Wasn't he the one his father was really, he was the cruel, you know, his father who finally died, thank goodness. But it was such a horrible person, who owned the slaves and everything. I mean, I thought that was all interesting, and just, you know, how formative that must have been for him. You know, his father's dying and he's telling him to go out and whip this slave because he thinks the slave is stealing from him, and he hangs him upside down and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That,
One question here is, in what way does the novel hint at currents of change coming to this very traditional society? Now they,
Divorce, you know, the divorce of, you know, that some of the children sought and got from their husbands, I guess. Going to educating women,
Mm-hmm.
which is a theme.
yeah, the girl London becoming a doctor was pretty
Mhm.
interesting. And traditionally, the women had jewelry. Didn't that one woman not like jewelry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
That was traditionally, that's how they got, as I understand it, a lot of times that's how they were given their wealth, through
Mhm.
jewelry.
Mhm.
I don't quite understand. Sometimes things like that are hard to understand when they have a real meaning in a different culture that we just don't know too much about. What about that guy who was stealing? Marwan? What was?
Mar-
Yeah, he was a sad character, I thought. Sad. He was a sad character.
And he was basically what? Brother of, or cousin of Abdullah? It's so hard to keep them all straight.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the first cousin of Abdullah.
Yeah.
Abdallah.
You know, it's funny, I don't know anything about Iran, so I kind of looked up. It said that it's a monarchy. There's a lot of torture, you know, a lot of social mores are very strong. If you want to be a reporter there, you have to get the approval of the royal family to report on the royal family. So it sounds like it's still very oppressive, but what's interesting is they said they have tried to, from an economic standpoint, become more modern. So their cities are more modern. They have a lot of tourism. You know, so they're trying kind of, if you're just looking in and knowing nothing about the country, you might think it's more progressive than it really is. But it's the monarchy, and you know, you just don't go against the monarchy. So it's just kind of interesting that along with this book and sort of the culture that's presented. So.
I mean, you think of what we hear about Saudi Arabia right next door.
Right.
Some of the go on there. And who knows what their religion is. We were trying to look up the religion, what version of Islam it is. And it seems to be a little separate from some of the other groups like the Sunnis and the Shiites. It's a very old form that predates those two branches.
Oh.
So I don't really fully understand it. I was thinking all of that area was part of the Ottoman Empire, but it was not. That Ottoman Empire just went along the shores of the Red Sea and around some of the shores. Well, there's the Arabian Peninsula. So it was around here, you know. But the people living there are apparently a combination of Persian, Arabic, and African, I guess, which is interesting. I think they had a lot of slaves coming over to Yemen from Africa also. So even though they're on the east side.
The Ottoman Empire included Egypt.
Yeah.
At one point at least.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on when you take your snapshot of the borders.
Well, it did not seem to include this part though of the Arab Peninsula. Which I was surprised because they went so far into Europe and they were so spread out, but not that part of it. So it's such a mysterious place, right? I think. And isn't it interesting that the author herself went to study in Scotland, got her PhD in Scotland, but now she's back in her home country teaching.
Yeah.
And has become pretty popular in her area with teaching.
Yeah, because very often those authors, it is, you're right, Laura, that she went back to her country to teach, because so often authors who have grown up in another culture, or not so often, but sometimes, then they come to the US or England and then to just stay and not return. So I think it is remarkable that she went back.
And she's really made a name for herself because she's won so many awards with her novels, in Arabic awards in her area. But now that she's translated into English and is branching out, she's becoming quite a national figure. If you do look up any videos, there's one that I saw of her in her home being celebrated for having won the Man Booker Award. It gives you a kind of different picture of her sitting there among other people in her culture versus across from PBS interviewers or something.
Yeah.
You see her in a different way. It's kind of fun, interesting to see that. So I'd recommend looking for some different videos of her. What did you think about Howla, that woman, the one who married the Canadian cousin?
Oh, koala, yeah.
He basically abandoned her. To me, that was so sad.
So bad.
She was so loyal.
Yeah.
And how could they afford that sort of thing? You wonder.
That I wondered, is she the one who had 14 children and he never knew what size clothes to bring back?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
She came back once a year.
Who was supporting her back in Oman?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. And apparently this is a middle class or a fairly well-off family. But they did get a lot of money through oil, as I understand it, that country.
Mhm.
But they were business people, right? So how were they getting money? He seemed to be a failure over in Canada, ultimately. And it's interesting that they all seem to go to Canada, of all places, right?
I think it's a little easier to go to Canada.
Because the
So-
British Empire,
Probably
maybe?
from an immigration standpoint, yeah.
So was there income from the dates? It was a date farm, Alharthi, where the farm or the ranch, I don't want to call it, the spread on which they lived. I couldn't see how the dates produced enough income for all they were doing, including the vehicles and
And the food,
What-
how would you get all that food? It's a desert area, really, isn't it?
well, they had a canal system that sounded fairly sophisticated. It's described in the book in two places at least, but it's still an agricultural crop, and I think it is. I know it's exported, but I just wondered about it.
No experts here on Middle Eastern economics.
Unless the citizens get a share of the oil profits, which I believe is the way it's managed in other Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, we did read that the British and the Portuguese had influence in that area historically. So I don't know if they were part of that whole British Empire. That, as I said, that there's that interesting TV show on Netflix, a BBC production of The Last Post, which is basically the end of the British in neighboring Yemen, which it always mystifies me what they were doing, all those countries. So
It was part of their trade route, I think. And they helped when the ships were going back and forth to India. They needed those ports along the way,
Yes.
or at least needed to control those countries. Think pirates and stuff,
well, and also after World War I, when the Ottoman Empire did collapse, even though they weren't part of that, the whole thing with oil started booming. And a lot of those countries were very important to British and the other colonial powers, right? As a result of the oil. Nobody knows too much about this area. It's kind of confusing.
Not a frequent travel destination for Americans.
Laura,
Well, that you
do you remember years ago when we had this gal named Allison who worked over there?
Allison Green.
Boy, now she was the authority. Where is she when we need her?
Yeah.
Not here.
I think go to Milwaukee.
She was an amazing woman.
Yeah, and there is a retired nurse, Brenda, who comes in the library, who was in Saudi Arabia for many
Oh,
years.
really?
Too bad she couldn't join us. She doesn't have good internet at her house, but she might have something to say about it.
Okay, so I just looked at Oman on Wikipedia. Their natural resources include petroleum, copper, asbestos, marble, limited, limestone, chromium, gypsum, and natural gas. So it has quite a bit of mineral wealth.
Yeah.
Especially look at the petroleum. And then it has severe soil salinity, which I think is common in countries that border on the ocean that are deserts, and very limited freshwater supplies. That's why the canal system for the date production around Alharthi is very significant and very forward-thinking too.
Well, here's a question that sort of deals with what we've been saying just now. Celestial bodies set in a village outside of Muscat, Oman, depicts a culture unknown to most of us in the West. What have you learned? What surprised you? What angered and even shocked you? So really the cruelty and the slavery seemed to be the most
Slavery.
shocking part of it. But
Yeah, and how recent it was.
did anyone notice how they
Yes.
talked about having to be buried in your hometown? And we just recently had that book.
Yes.
What was the name of that?
Yeah,
one?
we had the family that came back from Egypt when the girl died, bringing back the two boys who really would have been much happier to stay in Cairo. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, just
That
the
is
first,
hard work.
just a couple times ago, we did that book, and it's already out of my head, where
Oh, yeah,
the father wanted to be buried in his hometown. And
Yeah.
he had to drive
Yeah.
miles.
Death,
That is hard work. Yeah.
that was
That
just
was an amazing story. Wow.
amazing.
Yeah,
death is hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Death is hard work. Yeah.
Yeah.
that was it. But here it's the same thing. They, they all look at the capital city as the cool place to go, but you have to go home to be buried in your cemetery. Which is-
But there was somebody who didn't want to be. I can't remember now. But
Yeah.
somebody did not go back. He said, "No way are you going to bury me there." It was a male character, I think.
In this book,
Yeah.
Because wasn't it like Abdullah's father wanted him, like he had to stay in the smaller community. He wanted to keep the big house open because so he could host all of these people. That was such a strong part of the culture. And he kept it, and Abdullah just wanted to go to the big city. He didn't really necessarily want to be staying, where his father, and as soon as his father died, they moved. They moved to however you pronounce Muscat or whatever. Remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I think in most cultures that people who have been there for more generations than we can even imagine, they figure that no one will be there to visit their graves or put flowers on their graves. Most cultures, families go to the cemetery and party at their ancestors' grave sites. It's a special day of the year where they, the Day of the Dead or whatever culture, they actually go there, and it's a beautiful place, and they bring picnics and all that stuff. So if you're buried in another country, who's going to do that for you? So I don't think it's just Eastern countries. I know it's European countries too, that when I was in Europe and went to cemeteries, there were families there having parties. So
they have more of an
think it's
attachment
understandable.
to the land than we do seem to do here.
well, it's about honoring you when you're dead too. Who's going to remember you if you're buried somewhere else? I think some of my elderly relatives are upset by cremation because of that. They go, how can we visit their grave if they're cremated and their ashes are scattered? So I think it's all over, not just Eastern.
Yeah. Well, again, I always go back to Turkey, but what astounds me is when they serve the military, if your family is from the west part of the country, you serve in the east. So you don't have any allegiances to that part. But you could have been born and raised in the east and never been to the west, but because your family heritage is from the west, they think of it as your homeland. And that just amazes me. Your family's so tied to that history. And considering that everyone in this country, so many of us have come over from somewhere else, we have a different perspective, don't we? Inherently. So, well, we're getting down to the last few minutes, 10 minutes. Does anyone have anything you want to add about this?
I'm glad we read it, because even though I didn't like it,
Yeah.
no, it really, it was, I mean, I didn't like it for lots of reasons, but I did like it, the fact that we chose it, and I never would have picked it to read any other time. So thank you.
Learn things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, because some of these books are more literary and very, very challenging, and I wouldn't take them on. And I always think, well, I shouldn't put books like that on our list, but we do have a mixture of books, and it's good to have a few of those. And then, like on the new list, there's some really lightweight ones that are more for fun months,
Fun.
So I think
Not
it's-
beach reads. I hope it's not beach reads.
No, no, not quite.
Harlequin romance.
Not quite that light, but
Okay.
like, we've had a few that are a little lighter. But
Yeah.
I do think it's good to combine books that you wouldn't necessarily choose on your own. And
I would concur.
I agree.
I think it
Yeah.
challenged me. It challenged me so much that I went for it a second time, and I got a lot the second time.
I liked it a lot, except for the ending. But I think I didn't like the ending because I didn't understand it. So I was interested in Adele's point, and I'm gonna take it out again and go back and read at least the last half and see if I can figure out the ending for my own satisfaction.
Okay, Ruth, we'll talk about it sometime, okay?
Is anyone going to read her book Bitter Orange when it comes out in 2021?
No.
I
Probably.
don't think so.
If you put it on the list.
I would probably,
Yeah.
Well, okay, I think we pretty much run out of steam here. Unless someone wants to say
Okay.
anything else about
thank
the
you, Morgan. Is Morgan
Thank
listening?
you. Thank you. Laura,
Goodbye.
She's listening in the background, but
Oh,
And I had another question about the ending I just thought of. Is
yeah.
Not only, I mean, I thought I got the ending, but what I didn't get was how it related to the rest of the book. So that's another thing to think about if you're going to reread it. Maybe you can tell us how did it relate to the female thing, you know? So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
The part about
Don't hold your breath.
One idea I had was that you
Again.
just need to finish the novel and finish it off by knocking off Muhammad. But that was too Western an idea. I rejected that even when I read it.
Maybe
Okay.
that's what she wanted is lots of interpretations.
Probably.
Nice to see you, Arlen.
Yep, good to see everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll see you
Thank
next.
you
I think
again.
it's September 1st is the next
Okay.
book. It's
oh,
our-
September
Okay.
1st. Okay.
Number one.
All right.
Everyone
Good
who
book,
read that
too.
next one
Wow.
really liked it.
Yes, I'm enjoying it. It's a good book.
It's
Yes.
a good one.
Oh, good
Good.
Yeah.
book.
Do we know what the
Very
book is
good.
in September?
Yes.
Afterlife.
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 Just an excellent read. Boy, that was good.
Good
Yep.
to hear that from so many people.
Yep.
So,
I'm enjoying.
And again, a book that I would not have chosen, but just an excellent read. Yeah.
well, I think we read one by her some years ago, the Butterfly book.
Oh,
Does anyone remember
Right.
the Year of the Butterfly?
yes, yes, yeah. I forgot about that.
And
Yes.
I don't remember that one, but yeah, this was good.
I'll have to look back.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'll
Thank
see
you.
you.
We'll
See you next
later.
month, if not
Yeah.
before.
Good to see
Okay.
everyone. Enjoy
Bye.
the book group in August.
Bye.
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 Stay safe.
There we go. Ah, well, that was
So
fun.
what happened to Arlen all that time and then?
She was down below. If you get too many people in the squares, she was below the squares. So we couldn't see, we could if we kept going, scrolling it back and forth with our finger. But, yeah.
Bye.
Oh,
I
dear.
just thought they would just get smaller. I was very confused.